Hi, I'm introducing a tool that I've developed in order to take a large class and allocate students into group projects based on particular topics. So the tool itself is something that I've used for this, and I've shared it with some colleagues, and I thought I'd put together some instructions in its use and share it a little more widely. So this is what the interface looks like. You have to upload a CSV spreadsheet file with some key information. And I'm going to go through that information, show you how I get it via Google Forms, how you would upload it, and then how the tool itself processes that information. So the CSV file has to have information on each individual student, an identifier, the username here, some particular attribute of the student. In the example we'll talk about here, we're looking at the major of different students, and I'll explain why. Their preference ordering in terms of topic, first preference, second preference, and then some sort of fixed attribute here where we're looking at which tutorial they're in. Okay, so each the CSV file has to contain these names, and they have to be case sensitive for column headers. So if you have that, you're able to upload the file. Okay, so how do we get that information? I do it via Google Forms, create a quick survey, and link it to a spreadsheet, and then we'll be able to download the data and upload it to the tool. So topic selection, we will start with a multiple choice grid, which allows us to assess their preferred topics. So first choice, second choice. So as an example, one of my colleagues has a class where he has students break into groups and select a sustainable development goal to analyze and decide on a particular project having to do with that sustainable development goal. So let's use that as an example here. SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So using the multiple choice grid here is helpful. We can require responses for the first and second preference, and by limiting one response per column, which you cannot see because the camera is blocking, requiring one response in each row, that will make sure that, for example, the student isn't able to select SDG 1 for both their first and second preference. The tool needs them to make two discrete preference choices. Okay, so we have their choices. We need to know something about them. So here we're going to do a drop down for the fixed, which is they could have different tutorial slots. So 9 a.m. on a Monday, 3 p.m. Tuesday. Well, let's do Monday, 9 a.m., Tuesday, 10 a.m., and Wednesday, 3 p.m. Okay, and so on and so forth. Next, we need that required. Next, we need to know something about them. And again, the example we're working with, we want to know something, their major. So it could be politics, sociology, anthropology, and so on and so forth. Now this attribute could be gender. If you want to make sure the groups are distributed, the attribute feature is to distribute amongst groups. So, for example, in this class, one of the goals of the class is to get students to be able to work effectively in interdisciplinary teams. So actually, he wants students who are from politics working with students from sociology, anthropology, etc. They want the teams themselves to be diversely composed, so that the attribute function in the tool spreads them out to the best that it's possible. Okay, so we've got fixed, we've got choices. For the username, one way you can do this is by asking the students to fill that in. You can ask them their email address or their username, their student ID as a short answer. You might also want to consider under settings and responses having collecting their email addresses. Sometimes students will type in their student ID wrong or their email address wrong, and you need to know who they are. So that can cross-reference that. Conversely, if you only rely on their email addresses, sometimes they're logged in with their Google private accounts, and it confuses the system. So anyway, this is what it looks like if we preview the form. This is what it looks like. I'm a student. I'm coming in here. I'm looking at the choices. I want SDG 1, and I'm going to try and do 1 for both, and it shouldn't allow me to do that, and it is allowing me to do that, so something's not set up quite right here. Limit 1 per column. Let's go back and refresh, and now it says if I try and have SDG1 as my first and second preference, that's not allowed, so I'll need to select something else here. Which tutorial am I in, which major, and some identifier, student number, etc. So we submit that, and those answers can be ported over to a spreadsheet. And so here we've got username attribute fixed. We'll want to change this to fixed first underscore choice, second underscore choice, just because the tool needs it to be called that explicitly. Otherwise, it'll get confused. Okay, so when the students have completed the form and you have all the data that you need, you can download this data. Download as a CSV, and then it will look something like this. Your first row has the column labels, and then a particular student with this ID has their first choice. They want to do a topic on SDG 4, the second choice SDG 1, and then which tutorial they're in and which major in this example. Here we have data for 200 students, randomly generated, just to show you how this will work. So you can imagine doing this by hand, figuring out who goes where, or even if you're handy with Excel, can be a little cumbersome to distribute the students in an efficient way. Make sure the group sizes aren't too big, aren't too small. They have sufficient diversity of majors within them, within the particular tutorial slots. So rather than do that by hand, I simply go to the allocation tool, select the CSV, upload it, and it'll take a minute and analyze it. And once it's done, it gives a recommendation for how they should be allocated. Based on this allocation, 190 students get their first preference, 2 get their second preference, and 8 get neither their first nor their second preference. Depending on the number of topics, the number of students per tutorial, and the minimum group size, some students simply won't be able to get their first 2 preferences. That's just the way it is. Okay, so here we have groups of approximately 6, but really we don't want any less than 4. So the tool is going to try to, given those preference ordering, maximize the number of first and second preferences, maximize the diversity of attribute here majors within each group, and then allocate the groups accordingly. So you can see this visually tells you how good a job the tool is doing on both of those factors. And you can see 8 is the maximum size here, 6 is the approximate size, 8 is practically the maximum size that we're seeing in this data. And you can, the minimum here is 4 as per here. If we change the minimum to 3 here, it's going to update. And you can see that some groups are now 3, and that allows more diversity of choice. Some particular popular topics, for example, SDG 4, you can see here has 2 different slots, 2 different groups that are doing SDG 4. That it has allocated the students in such a way that that is possible given the minimum group size. If we bump that minimum group size up to 6, then that becomes less possible. Fewer people get their first or second preference, and the groups are larger. And it's less likely that you'll have more than one group doing the same topic within the same tutorial. So you can play around with the group size. Sometimes it's useful to have particularly large groups and ask the students to specialize in terms of function. Maybe somebody's the editor, etc. There's a wide variety of use cases that are available here, but you can have a play with it, see if it's useful for your goals here. And then once you've decided on an ideal allocation of students, you click here, and it will show you this student is in the Wednesday 2 p.m. tutorial in the SDG for group number 1, and so on and so forth. And you have those data for the students. You can download it as an Excel or a CSV file, and then upload that information directly into your LMS, into Moodle in our example. And so the prospect of doing all this by hand can be quite daunting, and quite frankly can be a deterrent to engaging in a lot of group projects. This makes it a lot easier, more efficient, and takes away a lot of the headache. So have a look, play around with the tool, edit the data, build some sample data that you might want to use, or indeed tried it for your class, and see how you go. If it works, if it doesn't work, if you have questions, shoot me an email, tag me on Twitter, tag me on LinkedIn. Those links are there on the page. I hope you find it useful, and I love to hear about it if you do. Thanks.